So you've been thinking about planting a tree. Well, there are a few things that might be helpful when you make your choice and how you go about the process. The fall is a great time, so why don't we get started and we'll have a walk around a nursery. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The Garden Home vlog is made possible by Gilbert H. Wild & Son, who've been growing beautiful perennials since 1885. Ralston Family Farms, a farm family producing delicious rice for your table. First Community Bank, whose heart is in the community, as well as Sun Patience, Super Cal Petunias, and Dragon's Breath Celosia. And Crystal Bridges, Museum of American Art. Check out my website to learn more about the brands we love. The fall is an excellent time to plant trees. Actually, it's a great time to plant a lot of things. We tend to think of spring planting, which is odd because you can take advantage of an entire, well, couple of seasons to establish a tree, or for that matter, even shrubs and things like that. What I love about the fall is that the soil will continue to stay warm and plants can root in. Whenever I see those first signs of fall, I begin to think this is the time I need to be planting some things. I know spring is when we tend to always want to plant. We're programmed to plant in the spring, but for trees, particularly balled-and-burlapped trees, it's a great time to plant. Of course, it's the time to plant spring blooming bulbs and lots of other things in the garden, but today I thought we'd just focus on trees and talk about varieties, talk about their uses, and maybe a few techniques on how to get them to grow. Who doesn't love trees, and who hasn't enjoyed standing in the shade of a tree someone else planted? It's a great time of year to take a stroll around your local garden center. It's something I really enjoy. And looking for trees to plant, I've always got areas that I want to plant a tree, particularly something that might have spring bloom or also great fall color. Now, trees are typically broken down into three different ways you can purchase them. You can purchase them bare root, like the National Arbor Day Foundation, I think, gives away little seedlings that come bare root, which can be planted. You can buy them in containers, or you can buy them what's called balled and burlapped. And that's what this tree is. It's a balled and burlapped tree, meaning it was dug out of the ground or out of the nursery. And they take very good care of their trees here by having a drip system on them. And so they can cut the roots around here, lift this tree out, and it can be planted in your garden. This is a wonderful little maple. One of the advantages of a balled and burlap tree is that you can often get a larger caliper tree or even a larger tree balled and burlapped. But the old adage about cutting the roots is that you have to expect the first year for the tree to sleep, the second year for it to creep, and the third year it will leap. Whereas if it is a container grown tree with all of its roots intact, you can go from sleep, if we plant it in the fall, it's going to be rooting in, it's really not sleeping, and then it will leap the next spring. So if I had a choice and I'm planting a smaller tree, I'm always going to go for the container grown if I can. But if I need a large tree, then I'm certainly willing to wait for it to leap in that third year. If we look a little closer here, you'll see these little red stems on this maple. This is a Sun Valley, and it has great fall color for us. It's a red maple type, and there are lots of different cultivars of red maples. And they all have various growth patterns. Some are a little more columnar, some spread more, others have different shades of oranges and yellows and deep reds in the fall. So it depends on the cultivar that you choose. But they're all from that native tree, Acer rubrum, or the red maple. And these are just improved varieties. I love the smaller leaf on this one, and I love the red stem, and this one will color up really quite nicely. So let's continue talking a little bit about shade trees. The maple, as I mentioned, is a great one. This is a willow oak. A lot of people mistakenly call this a pin oak, which it's actually not. This is a willow oak because the leaf looks like a willow leaf, all right? And this is one of my favorites because it has small leaves, not big leaves you have to rake up. And this will grow to an enormous tree and can take ground that doesn't drain particularly well. So if you have heavy clay soils, a willow oak will perform beautifully. Oaks grow virtually all over the United States. There are different species of oaks from different parts of the country, and so it's best to go to a local garden center and see which of the oaks or shade trees they offer. An advantage of this tree, besides its small leaf, is that in the fall it has a beautiful golden color to it. Not as bright yellow as our friend the ginkgo, which is a wonderful slow-growing tree, but if you grow ginkgos, you need to remember to always buy an improved cultivar, not a seedling, because you want to make sure that you are buying a male ginkgo and not a female ginkgo if you're planting it up close to the house, or for that matter, along a sidewalk or a street. You see, the females produce a fruit, which happens to be edible, but that fruit has a hard seed and that fruit will drop, and it has an odor to it. And so you want to be careful in terms of where if you plant female ginkgos, plant them at the periphery of your property, or if you want to make sure that there's no fruit drop, plant males. Of course, the thing to remember about the gorgeous ginkgo, it's an ancient tree, goes back millions of years. It's a very slow grower, unlike the maple we just saw or that willow oak. But they'll live a long time. Now, this is an example of a male called Grindstone, and you can see it was actually grafted down here. We planted a couple of male ginkgos at the farm, and they grow just incrementally each year, but you can see quite a bit of growth on them over the past several years, and their color in the fall is spectacular. Now let's talk about a few other trees that will be on the opposite end of the spectrum, like weeping willow. If you plant a weeping willow, you want to make sure you have plenty of room, because this plant grows very fast. But again, I tend to want to place it away from the house, certainly away from any underground plumbing. If you have a septic system, avoid planting a weeping willow near it, because the roots will get into your septic system and clog it. And I really don't want one around any kind of plumbing. They're beautiful set on the edge of a pond or in the distance for a nice textural contrast. Now, speaking of textural contrast, I want to show you one of my all-time favorites. This is the redbud, native to America and China and other places, but this tree has a wonderful heart-shaped leaf. Now, it comes in lots of different colors, leaf colors. It has, there's one called forest pansy that has a burgundy leaf, and then there are others that have more of a golden leaf. And what's wonderful about these is they're one of the first trees to bloom in the spring. I just love those bright pink flowers on them. And the little secret is those flowers are delicious, and I love to put them on salads and nibble on those little red buds. So it's worth planting one of these smaller ornamental trees just for the beauty of the blooms, the taste of the blooms, and then you can see they're already beginning to turn a beautiful golden yellow for fall. Now, one of the other ornamental trees that I love is the dogwood, all right? But dogwoods, Cornus, Florida, have had a lot of trouble here in this part of the world over the years. But the Chinese dogwood, Cornus Kousa, seems to be resistant to these, and so I'm planting one at the farm. So why don't we go and check it out? Okay, let's talk about a few pointers on planting a tree. This is the little Chinese dogwood that I found several of these in 1-gallon pots not too long ago, let's say a couple of months ago, and I potted them up in 3-gallon, and I've gotten quite a bit of growth on this little plant from that purchase. And that's one way that you can really cut down on expense. What I want to do here is plant a grove of these Chinese dogwoods. You know, the American dogwood has had some problems, and so this one seems to be a little more disease resistant and can be a little more drought tolerant. It also produces a beautiful flower that has pointed petals. These all will bloom white, and they will set a fruit that looks kind of like a raspberry, and the birds actually like them, and they are edible. So there are a lot of recipes online of how to use Kousa dogwood fruits. So this is Cornus Kousa chinensis, and I'm really excited about this grove of 5. And then on the other side of the driveway here at the farm, we're going to plant another 5. So by planting 10, you can see why I wanted to start with some 1 gallons, bump them up into a 3-gallon pot, and now we're ready to put these in a hole. Now, I like to dig a hole that's about 3 to 4 times the size of the root ball, as you can see here. And then I'm going to backfill it with a really good mixture of compost. And of course we use some of our farm organic manure to kind of fill in the hole here. Then I'm going to mix that with just a little bit of the soil from the hole. Add a little bit more compost. Now what I want to do here is make sure that the top of this root ball kind of comes in line with the top of the ground here. And so in order to do that, I'm going to slide the dogwood out. Let's see how much it's rooted in since I potted them. Not very much. So you can see the roots that it's put out in that little 3-gallon pot, all those young feeder roots. So just ease the little guy in like this and begin putting the soil around it. At this point, I would fill the hole with water and make sure that there are no air pockets. And then I just continue putting around the good rich topsoil that's blended with the compost. Now the key here is not to plant the tree too deeply. And what I'm going to do with the soil just about at the right level is to build this berm along the back side of the tree. As the water comes down the hill, it'll be caught by this little dam or levee, if you will, and add extra moisture to the roots. Then what I'm going to do is take a stake with all of these and stake the little guy up like this and gently tie it to the stake. It'll stay like that for the next couple of years, but I'll have to really watch how I've tied it so that I don't constrict the trunk itself. And because you can actually cut into it. So I never would use a wire. I would use a piece of twine, or what I typically like to use is a little piece of plastic hose. Works very, very well. Clear hose because you don't see it. But anyway, those are some basic tips on planting a tree. This guy will grow with its 4 other neighbors in this area, and hopefully over the years make a spectacular presence for lots of people to enjoy. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video, let us know. And if you have questions, I love hearing from you. Also, if you'd like notifications on new content that we post on our channel, just ring the bell. And hey, subscribe to our channel. And if you're interested in our newsletter, it goes out weekly. That's at palensmith.com. Happy gardening. Ooh, you're gonna grow to be such a big, beautiful tree.